Every UFC fighter receives basic pay for making weight and competing. While there are various aspects to determine it, it appears that certain fighters are being paid less. Israel Adesanya has recently made headlines due to his new and lucrative deal with the UFC. Let's dive into the video to find out what the contract is. First, what is the new contract all about? Some in the MMA community have mocked Jake Paul for his unconventional approach. Still, UFC champion Israel Adesanya stated that the American's crusade to raise fighter salary helped him land a better deal. As a result, the 32-year-old fighter earned a new lucrative deal with the MMA leader ahead of his eagerly anticipated rematch with Robert Whittaker earlier this month. Israel Adesanya certainly fought to earn whatever he had in life. He was a professional boxer who went 6-1, a professional kickboxer who went 80-5, and a UFC fighter who went 22-1. But his most recent fights haven't all taken place inside an octagon. Instead, Adesanya and his Paradigm Sports and AP Sports management teams have competed behind the scenes, and that's because his recent UFC 271 fight with Robert Whittaker nearly didn't occur. Now the UFC middleweight champion will join an elite squad of fighters that make a lot of money with the firm, which has been intensely watched in the last year. Only Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone and Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal performed better than Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, with 700,000 people purchasing the pay-per-view. As a result, you can see where Adesanya stands regarding modern-day UFC star power. Adesanya is pleased to have re-signed with the UFC, and although he's not worried that they announced before he re-signed, he is offended by how the fight was advertised. What role did Jake Paul play in getting the contract? We're happy to know that Israel Adesanya has plenty of admiration for YouTuber-turned-fighter Jake Paul and his campaign to increase pay for UFC fighters. Paul is not an MMA fighter, and as reported switch from the boxing ring to the cage may never happen. He is, however, a huge fan of the sport and has made it abundantly clear of his urge for UFC athletes to be paid extra. Fighter compensation has been at the forefront of MMA and UFC discussions for years. However, the topic has been far more prominent in MMA circles over the last year, as Paul has openly chastised UFC President Dana White in the media over how his athletes are rewarded. As per the reports, Octagon fighters only receive about 15% of the revenue earned by the UFC. Competitors get 50% or more of the money generated by the NBA and NFL. Adesanya reportedly signed a new deal with his management firm that was described amongst the most lucrative multi-fight contracts in the history of the UFC, and the 32-year-old sports star credited Paul on fighter compensation as a prominent factor in his new multi-fight contract. Israel Adesanya is here to shatter the idea that Jake Paul's effort to see UFC competitors earn greater compensation was a phony sentiment. The former UFC middleweight champion has even claimed that Paul's insistence on UFC President Dana White assisted him in obtaining a far more lucrative contract. Paul, the YouTuber-turned-boxer, has been feuding with White recently, even releasing a diss track last January intended at the UFC CEO. Was there a need for this contract? Adesanya believes that agreements like his will proliferate and allow other fighters to make more benefits and profit in the future. The 25-year-old, who formed Most Valuable Promotions in 2021 and now promotes professional boxer Amanda Serrano, has long chastised the UFC for underpaying its fighters. Conor McGregor is the clearest illustration of this. His box office success has brought in more money for the UFC and consequently the fighters than anybody else. However, the disparity in UFC pay is primarily determined by the fighter in the issue. For example, McGregor earned $5 million regardless of what occurred at UFC 264, but because of the pay-per-view bonuses in his contract, he earned an additional $18 million. That is not something that every combatant understands. The heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou earned only $600,000 at UFC 271. That's quite a discrepancy, isn't it? Another significant difference is that McGregor's third battle with Poirier generated 1.6 million pay-per-view buys, making it the sixth fight in which McGregor has sold over $1 million. Without McGregor, the UFC has just 11 pay-per-views that have grossed over $1 million, yet no one has headlined more than 2. Adesanya's most recent Octagon appearance earned 600,000 buys. The problem of poor compensation among UFC competitors has been a heated topic in recent years, but according to Dana White, it is not as serious as many portray it out to be. Well, Dana White's comment unambiguously shows that such a contract was desperately needed, and we're ecstatic that Israel Adesanya has secured such a deal. What are Israel Adesanya's views regarding the contract? Adesanya just inked a new deal with the world's largest MMA company, which puts him second only to Conor McGregor in terms of revenue. His representatives, Paradigm Sports, described the deal as a lucrative contract. However, Adesanya believes that the quest for higher fighter compensation has not ended here. In an interview, Israel Adesanya stated that just because he got his new contract doesn't imply he has to avoid talking about it. It will not be mistaken if he says that everyone should be compensated fairly for their job. He's well compensated, but he's still avaricious. The current UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou is standing over his demand for a substantial pay raise under a new deal. Although he has completed his 6-fight requirement under the contract he signed a few years back, but still, his contract is pending with the company for yet another 12 months due to a champion's clause in his agreement. On the other hand, Adesanya wants to see his friend Ngannou get a raise for his accomplishments in the octagon. Furthermore, he would like to see all UFC fighters paid more, from champions and pound-for-pound fighters to the sportsmen that begin the event on a UFC Fight Night card, since he believes it improves the individual and enhances the organization's entire product. It's noteworthy that Adesanya believes that contracts like this will spread and allow other fighters to earn significant money in the future. We hope Adesanya's optimism turns out to be beneficial for all UFC fighters. Now, in other related news, court refuses bail to the former UFC champion Cain Velasquez, accused of firing. You'd be shocked to know that the state of California has refused Cain Velasquez's bail, and he will stay detained until his trial concludes. The 39-year-old former UFC heavyweight champion was detained on February 28th after engaging in a high-speed drive and shooting multiple bullets from a .40 caliber handgun at some other car in which Harry Galarte Jr. was sitting. Galarte Jr. is charged with assaulting Velasquez's 4-year-old cousin. Nevertheless, the presiding judge declined to release Velasquez on bail. Galarte Jr.'s stepfather, who was in the car that was hit repeatedly and shot at, was struck by a gunshot. However, adequate medical treatment was provided to him timely. In addition, many well-known celebrities have come out in favor of Velasquez, including Colby Covington, who defeated Jorge Masvidal at UFC 272. The personalities who have come out in favor of the 39-year-old boxer find it repulsive. According to Joe Rogan, humans suffer from mental illness. But what about the one who molests a baby? The sickest of all those illnesses is child molestation. Well, we have the same thought as Joe Rogan. Next, Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal disclosed what they have said during their UFC 272 fight. To everyone's surprise, Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal have divulged the comments they exchanged in the octagon during UFC 272. Covington and Masvidal, longtime friends turned vicious foes, got the opportunity to resolve their animosity in the main event of last Saturday's pay-per-view occasion in Las Vegas. Except for a big right hand from Gamebred in round 4, the eagerly awaited grudge match was a one-sided event. Colby Covington was able to fatigue and infuriate Jorge Masvidal with his wrestling before ultimately breaking him up on foot in the latter rounds. After 25 minutes, the judges awarded Chaos a decision victory, with all 3 scorecards showing him comfortably ahead on points. Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington continued to exchange jabs after the final whistle, despite the decisive finish. Both men disclosed what was said throughout the fight during their individual appearances at Saturday's UFC 272 post-fight press conference. Colby Covington mentioned the following details about the main event winner. First, he claimed to be informing Jorge Masvidal that he was still superior to him. He went on to say that he is the king of Miami. Since then, Masvidal has made it obvious that he intends to confront Chaos again, either in the octagon or even in the streets of Miami. And that's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts regarding Israel Adesanya's lucrative contract? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.